Welcome to Passport to Flavor. I'm Malia Yoshioka, and in my travels, I've learned that some of the most meaningful connections begin when you have the courage to try something new. Join me for conversations about food, language, travel, and the stories that connect us. Today's guest is Andrea LeMieux, founder of the Quirky Cork, author of The Essential Guide to Turkish Wine, and one of my favorite people to share a glass of wine with in Istanbul. For more than a decade, Andrea has been exploring Turkey through its wine, food, culture, and history, helping others to discover a side of the country that many travelers never see. Along the way, she's earned certifications, including WSET Level 2 and Italian Wine Scholar, and she's become one of the leading English language voices on Turkish wine. Andrea, welcome to Passport to Flavor.
Thank you so much for having me, Malia.
Cheers, and what are you drinking today?
Cheers. I am drinking a white wine from a Turkish producer based in Konya, which is a very interesting place for a Turkish wine producer to be based. It's as you know, it's a very conservative part of the country. But there is a gentleman there who works with very old vineyards, proving that wine has been made there for a really long time, full of very rare grapes. This one is called Ak Üzüm. And that's what I'm drinking.
Okay, sounds good. And I have a Spanish cava, which you've just informed me is. Can you tell me about my wine?
Yeah, you're drinking Freshenet. I didn't quite see the label to know which one of the iterations of Freshenet it is, but Freshenet is a really well-known cava producer, and regardless of which label you get, you generally end up with something very drinkable.
It says traditional method, Cordon Negro ground selection. So yay.
So yeah.
All right. And so start with some of the questions. For people who have not met you before, how do you usually explain what you do?
You mean the wine part of what I do? Because I have 5 jobs. Well, that's an interesting question. How do I explain what I do? I'm not a sommelier.
Okay.
I know a lot of people, that's the one wine word that they know, but I'm not a sommelier. I have not trained in that. That is like a whole different certification thing. I don't work in a restaurant, so I'm not that. I like, I guess, to say that I'm um I don't know, an educational wine enthusiast, because
Okay.
it's slightly more than wine enthusiast, but it's not like scholarship level or anything like that.
Although you do have Italian Wine Scholar and WSET Level 2, so yeah, it's a bit more
Yeah,
than
so
just
I
an
mean, like, I have
enthusiast.
some of the basics under my
Mhm,
belt.
mhm.
But because I don't really work in wine 100% professionally,
Yeah.
it's more, and also because any of us who are specializing in things like Turkish wine, we've just kind of felt our way along. There's no formal education for Turkish wine.
Mhm.
Uh, so it's more just as an enthusiast who likes to share her passion and interest in Turkish wine, but that's not really hard. You know, it's hard to put on a business card like that. So.
And was this the original plan? What first brought you to Turkey?
No, I moved to Turkey for a job that had nothing to do with wine. I was not involved in wine before I moved here. In fact, I used to live and work in DC in international development. And I came here in 2013. Yeah, I think. Um, 'Cause there was a lot of money for Syria at the time, and anyone who had Syrian money was either based in Istanbul or in Gaziantep. And my organization needed somebody on the ground. It was supposed to be a short-term placement. I did not like DC. I had been looking for a way to get out for a really long time and use this as the way to do it. So I came here for a job which ended 4 or 5 months after I got here and just stayed.
And Let's see. Looking back, where would you say that your curiosity about travel, language, and other cultures comes from?
Do you know, I have no idea. Um, I mean, genetically, I think from my maternal grandmother. She, according to my mom, she'd always wanted to travel. All like her whole, my mom remembers her whole life, her mom wanting to travel. And my grandmother did finally do a little bit of travel when she was older.
Mhm.
Uh, but I don't come from a family with a moneyed background. So even, like a road trip to the next state was a privilege.
Mhm.
Um, so I think I just wanted to get out of the village that I grew up in. And for some reason, language has always fascinated me. And I felt very connected to having a French last name. And when I was a kid, I used to like pretend I was speaking French, even though I absolutely was not. Um, and it just, I don't know. I knew when I went to university, I wanted to study foreign languages and use that as a springboard to travel. And I am a lot of things in my life have not worked out the way I thought that they would, but that I have been lucky enough that that's actually happened for me.
Mhm. And the village that you grew up in was where?
Yeah, so I'm okay. I gotta be. It's gonna be all backwards because actually, I'll do it this way because Michigan. Oh shoot, I can't look at the hand backwards. Sorry. I'm from West Michigan, from a
Okay.
very tiny village that is somewhat near the big lake. For anyone listening, if you've heard of Grand Rapids, possibly that's where I tell people I'm from, but that's the city, not the village.
Okay. So a village outside of Grand Rapids on the
Yeah,
Mitten. I've learned
on
about
the
the
bit,
Mitten from
on the bit.
And how does a girl growing up in Michigan start dreaming about these far off destinations? Because Istanbul and DC and all of these places isn't as far as you've gotten further. Where else
Yeah.
have you lived and traveled?
I've traveled not as extensively as you have, my goodness. Um, but I've really only lived in the US and I lived in Taipei for a little while.
Hmm.
And I've spent a lot of time in the former Yugoslavia region. So I didn't actually live there, but I spent a lot of time there for work. So it feels very familiar and homely to me.
Hmm.
Uh, and sorry, I actually now forgot the question.
That's okay because I was hoping you would bring up Taipei because that's a whole different language. How do you pick up
Yeah.
languages so, and because the grapes even that you're learning about are so obscure in different native grapes in different places, like how do you do so well with these languages? How many languages do you speak?
You're giving me you're being way too nice to me. I My language is are not good because for one thing I'm lazy. I'm a very very lazy person in all aspects of my life. Um so I'll get so far in a language and then kind of be like, well, I'm done with this one now. It's just terrible. It's terrible. Um Mandarin, I only did languages at university. I was actually mildly surprised that I managed to get a degree.
Mhm.
But Mandarin was one of the languages that I did at university. And then I went to Taipei for like a summer study thing. And after I graduated, frankly, I did not know what the next step was. I think that's a major hole in universities. They do not prepare kids for when they get out of school. It's just like, okay, now go get a job. And it's like, well, how? I don't know how to make a resume. I don't know how to get an internship. I don't know what I would get an internship. Like there's no preparation. And I knew I didn't want to go to grad school.
Mhm.
So I was like, I need to improve my Mandarin, which frankly I did. Um, but having been to Taipei, I knew I could kind of get by there.
Mhm.
So I moved there I applied for one of the language institutes and moved there for a year. And I probably would have stayed if I'd had the right connections to get like a real job.
Mhm.
I really, really love Taipei. Best Chinese food in the world is in Taipei.
Mm. What's your favorite dish or like what takes you back there when you think about it?
Oh, honestly, actually, it's more. not a dish, but the street food. Taipei has a really, really lively market scene and a lot of street food, and that is mostly what I lived on was street food, and Taiwanese noodle soup.
Mm, yum. I'm jealous.
So good.
And then now, currently, tell us what are we seeing behind you there?
So I live in Istanbul,
Hmm.
um, and I live in one of the central neighborhoods in Beyoğlu. And this is my balcony. I like to spend as much time out here as I can in, when it's not raining or actively snowing. And so behind me, maybe you can possibly see a tiny little slice of the Bosphorus.
I see it right between the flowers. And so, how would you say that Taipei street food compares with Turkish Street food.
Oh no, it's like 3 million times better. I'm sorry, Turkey. No, no. For one thing, I mean, street food here, I find it's not that I don't like it because I do, but it's very like maybe this guy does this one thing over here and this guy
Mhm.
does this one thing over here kind of a thing, and it, it's not an abundance,
Mhm.
but the markets in Taipei, there are stalls that just the selection is as big as a restaurant's, and all of the various things that you can get, everything from I mean from vegetables to things that you don't want to know what they are on a stick, and it's like everything. And this is so funny. I think I've lost most of my Mandarin because language is like a muscle. When you don't exercise it,
Mhm.
you lose it, right? Um, but one of the few words that I still remember is the word for garlic.
Okay.
One of the street stalls that I used to go to all the time, one of the things I had, it was just like French green beans
Mhm.
that they would just flash fry in, like stupid hot oil,
Mhm.
and then put crushed garlic on and then serve it to you like that, which I mean, yes, please. But I used to tell them, more garlic.
Mhm.
This one. 是很多 swan. Like, yes, yes, I'm sure I want more. Like, put more garlic on there.
They're like testing you, like, are you sure
Yes, yes, very much. They're
this is
like,
probably too much for a foreigner? That sounds delicious.
yeah.
And in Turkey, so okay, so not street food. What about Turkish dishes? What's your favorite Turkish dish?
Oh. No, I mean there are a few. I like a lot of the mezes. I mean maybe it's a little bit mundane, but I do love a stuffed grape leaf.
Mhm.
Çiğ köfte. I love me some çiğ köfte, especially in the summer. Autumn.
Mhm.
And she, what's the carrot? The havuç tarator.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
But I think my favorite meat dish is one that is a little bit rarer. It's more difficult to find. Is
Mhm.
the vişneli kebab, the sour cherry kebab.
Mhm. Yeah.
It is so good.
And this is the right season for it. Have you had it recently?
No, there's only one restaurant around here that does it. They no longer deliver to my area, even though they are a 15-minute walk away. They do not deliver anymore, the jerks. And they don't have an alcohol license.
Oh.
So,
Mhm.
yes, I'm reduced to cooking it myself.
You make your own vishnelik kebab?
I haven't tried the Turkish
Okay.
vişneli kebab, but I
Uh-huh.
have a recipe for an Iranian dish that is similar.
Okay.
Um, Similar but different. It's like you cook the cherries and then remove them
And these
and
are
cook
sour
down
cherries.
sour cherries,
Yeah.
yes. Cook
Mhm.
down the juice so that you get like a nice, a thicker juice. And then you take the cherries, those get folded into rice into a tadig.
Mhm. Okay.
And then you have like the tiny, tiny little, his recipe is these tiny, tiny little meatballs.
Mhm.
And so you undo the tadig thing with the meatballs, and then you pour the reduced cherry juice
Mhm.
on the
Mhm.
top. It's by, and I can't remember the chef's name right now, but his cookbook is called Bittersweet
Okay.
or Bitter and Sweet.
It's okay. We'll find it. We'll find it later.
He's a fantastic American Iranian chef.
It's delicious. I always go to Chia for vishneli kebab. That was when I first arrived in Turkey. This was the same season, and I can remember seeing it there, but also no alcohol license. So there was at the time when I first got there.
Really?
Yeah, they used to serve wine. I have a picture of a glass of wine with
Huh.
a plate of the meze from when I had first. That was the place I always say was where I fell in love with Turkish food. So, yep.
And it's like I feel bad complaining about that because it's like I don't always have to be drinking. But there are certain really special dishes here, and I think the Vizhnili kebab is one of them
Mhm,
that just are enhanced by a wine pairing, and I have found a few decent wines for that.
mhm.
Uh,
Turkish wines.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which ones would you pair with that?
I think I've done well with that one with karasakis, but also chol karasa
Uh huh.
does really well with that.
Can you tell us about those grapes?
What do you want to know? Wait a minute. So they're both Aegean grapes. Turkey's from Turkey's Aegean, obviously. Chol karasa is from a place called Chol. It means the black of Chol. We're very inventive with our grape names. I know. It produces medium-bodied wines that are really silky, low tannin. There's not like it's not like one of those like a Cabernet that you have to chew your way through. It's very silky on the palate. Um, Fairly robust alcohol though, but like really big red fruit flavors. Yeah, sour cherry actually
Mhm,
sometimes. Say pomegranate. You might get a little bit of strawberry in there, but it can also have some earthy tones. It's really, really lovely wines, and they also are making very nice Blanc de Noirs, rosés, sparkling, and
mhm.
sweet wine with that here. It's
Okay.
a very flexible grape. Karasakis is from the say the Asian
Mhm,
side of Çanakkale,
mhm. Yep.
in an area called Bayramuç. It
Mhm,
comes from the foothills of apparently in English we call it Mount Ida. I
mhm,
only learned this like last year.
mhm,
In Turkish, it's called the Kaz Daları.
mhm,
Very old vines, usually. Like we're talking not very old. Some of them are like young and they're 40 years old, but they
mhm,
can get older than that. All bush vines, all dry farm. They're high up in the mountains.
mhm,
Everything is hand worked, and these create again more on the medium-bodied side, but they're
mhm,
very pale. Like some of the wines made with Karasak depending on which clone you get, are so ethereally pale. You can see right through them. They're incredible.
mhm,
They're actually slightly more tannic
mhm,
than you would expect looking at it.
mhm,
Um, Very peppery, just big pepper bombs in your
mhm.
face, followed by a lot of red fruits. Also quite flexible. There's some very nice rosé made with it, some good sparkling made with it. It is actually my personal favorite red grape in Turkey.
Mhm. And those both sound like they would be delicious with Vishnali kebab.
They both are very delicious with fish kebab. And if any of your listeners happen to be in Texas, there's a fantastic Turkish wine importer in Houston who can ship throughout the state called Fine Turkish Wine, and he has several very nice examples of both of those grapes.
That was going to be one of my questions because I know it's really difficult with all of these grape names that nobody knows unless you've been to Turkey when you're trying to seek them out here. Sometimes it's very difficult to find, right? Which Turkish grapes or producers do you recommend people to find? Like, what are the easiest to find?
Throughout the US, I would look for Pashaeli, which Pasaeli, right? Oh, spelling.
Yes,
Um,
definitely. Mhm.
yes,
That's with the little thing.
that's with the little thing. Yes. Pashaeli is really widespread. I mean, he doesn't have a ton of wine in the US, but it's in a lot of places in the US because he works with one of the largest importers in the country.
Mhm,
And so you can find his wine, like even a bunch of wine stores in my home state in Michigan carry
mhm,
Pashaeri. Um, you can also look for Sevilen, Kyra. Those are larger format wineries that do some exporting. The importer in Texas works with, oh gosh, there are so many now. Heraki, Arcadia, Arda, Gürbuş, Antioch, uh, I said Heraki Kuzuba, Akberg, Castro Tirelli, and Buyuluba.
can't even hide my surprise because those are all really good wineries. That's
I
amazing. That is
know.
fantastic that that's available to people in the US, especially if you're
Right.
in Texas. So that's
Yeah.
great to know. Next time I'm in Texas, I'm definitely going to be trying to find some of these because I miss them. Um, so the grapes you mentioned, Chalcarasa and Karasakis, and that they come from different regions. Because I don't know how familiar everyone is with like the geography in Turkey. It's very large. Are there wine routes or wine regions that you would recommend people to explore?
It kind of depends on, I mean, yes, is the short answer. Which one depends really on the experience that people want. So if you want to, because, okay, so back myself up. Um, Most Turkish wineries are kind of in the middle of nowhere
Mhm.
and they're not necessarily near other wineries. So there are wine routes, but you still might end up driving an hour or more between single wineries.
Mhm.
So if you want to like mix wine tourism with traditional tourism,
Mhm.
there, you should go to X place. But if you're just there for wine, then you should go to Y place.
Mhm.
Um, I still really love the Trakya Parodası, the Thracian wine route, which is the first one established here.
Mhm.
Particularly if you're looking at the wineries that are in Upper Thrace, kind of more near the Bulgarian Greek borders,
Mhm.
because there you get a combination of familiar international grapes, but also some of the native Turkish grapes. There's some amazing producers up there. Quite a few of them now have restaurants and hotels or are at least near enough to a big city that will have accommodation options.
Mhm.
But there's not really a ton of traditional tourism to do up there
Okay.
other
And
than
would you say that that's like a day trip or?
it can be a day trip. You can
Mhm.
do two if you're really ambitious. You could do three
Mhm.
wineries on a day
Okay.
trip from Istanbul, but you could absolutely overnight it as well. Take your time a little bit more and then like tack on maybe Edirne because
Mhm.
Edirne is a great outside Istanbul trip for people to do.
Mhm.
If you're looking to combine
Mhm.
additional tourism,
Mhm.
so many people, one of the big things, to do here is Ephesus. It's one of
Mhm.
the most intact Greco-Roman ruin cities in the whole Aegean. And there are a number of wineries that are nearby Ephesus. So you could absolutely get like kind of an example of both of those. Or, of course, Cappadocia. There are a
Mhm.
lot of fantastic wineries in Cappadocia, and you can't get more traditional tourism than that area, as you very well know since you live there.
Yeah, 2 years in Cap. That's how I ended up staying in Turkey for 10 years. Cappadocia is what got me. Hot air balloons in the sky, and the wine that you're drinking, you said is from Konya, which is not too far from Cappadocia. Central.
Is it?
That.
No, you're right. They're both in central Anatolia. I just kind of
Mhm.
forget. Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of different regions. If someone was like a kind of intro to Turkish wine or Turkish wine 101, what would be like the top three grapes that you would tell them to search out? Maybe like a red, a white, and a wild card.
Oh, top three. That's well, that's akin to asking me what my favorite or what the best wines are. Like,
How many native grapes do we have in Turkey, by the way?
over 1,400.
Okay, yeah. So this is a difficult question, asking you to narrow it down to three.
Fair less than 100 are used currently in wine production, but even then, that's still a lot to choose from. I mean, I'm going to be biased and say you should drink karasakas because I love karasakas. Um, Whites, I think it needs to be either Emir or Narinja.
Hmm.
Those are very classic Turkish.
And where do those come from?
Uh, Emir is the Cappadocia grape. So if you are in Cappadocia, that is the best place to taste Emir.
Hmm.
Narinja comes from the Black Sea, but it is now grown in, I think, 6 of the 8 wine regions. It's really
Oh,
traveled
wow.
quite a lot.
Hmm.
Uh,
I feel like you often see those in blends as well.
Narinja, yes. Emir less so.
Hmm.
Uh, But so maybe Karasak is my wild card, and the other one is Kalajit Karaso, because
Mhm,
again, that's very um, classic Turkey, I
mhm,
think, Kalajit Karaso, which comes from central Anatolia.
mhm. Caressa again was the black, so the rye grapes. I remember when I first met you, my favorite go-to Turkish wines was the blend of, do you want to guess?
Excuse me, was kidding.
Yes. How did you know?
Because you said blend, and that is the blend. That is, if you come here and you get a blended red, that is the blend in this country. Yes.
And what do you think about this blend of
Well,
these grapes?
some of them are great. No, I
Mhm,
you know, I don't like a couscous. It is not my grape.
mhm,
Um, for people, I don't love comparing Turkish grapes to international grapes because I think you should just taste the Turkish grape the way it is. But it does help people wrap their minds around grapes that they don't understand, or haven't been introduced to yet. So Boğazkere is very much Turkey's Cabernet Sauvignon, right? It's
mhm,
high alcohol, it's big hefty tannins, it's generally needs some oak to tame it, not always, but generally. Um, Whereas a couscous is softer tannins, softer acidity, more fruit forward in flavor, and it is therefore our Merlot. And I deeply dislike Merlot. Um, and apparently that has transferred onto a couscous. I think there are like three couscous in this country that I particularly like, really, really love.
mhm.
But aside from that, I never want to drink one.
And the names of them, I like that comparison that it's like a Merlot Cabernet and some blend because yeah, that was how I found it. And I did not realize the whole world of Turkish wine until meeting you. So thank you for opening my eyes. But the names are so funny and they're very hard to remember, like with the grapes. Can you tell me about some of like the interesting names for Turkish grapes?
So it's interesting. I was having a conversation a month or so ago with somebody who made a point that I'd never thought of, that all of these black grapes that we're calling the black of a place, because they are generally named after wherever the grape seems to originate, are very likely modern naming conventions.
Hmm.
Because even though wine has been made in here since, I don't know, the sun first rose upon the earth, um, there are no records. There are very, very few records, particularly not from like the Byzantine and Ottoman times when, you know, record keeping might have been more detailed than, say, the Hittites were. Although the Hittites, to be fair to them, were actually quite detailed about winemaking. Uh, so we think that a lot of what we call them village names have been lost. And so
Mhm.
this black of place X is more of a modern naming convention, but some of these village names have survived. And the Boğazkere and Kuzguzu are great examples. Boğazkere means throat scratcher. As they say, it is the most tannic of the Turkish grapes. And when it's made poorly, which a lot of it can be, yeah, you really feel that it just like rips your throat apart going down.
Mhm.
And a Kuzguzu, it means ox's eye, because so generally wine grapes tend to be quite small, like, you know, size of the top of the pinky. But couscous are very large. They're more like, you know, like red globes, like table grapes. And they're very round and very, very dark in color. So they say they look like an ox's eye. Then there's Narinja, which we mentioned earlier from the Black Sea.
Mhm.
That means delicate because the grape is quite thin skinned and needs a lot of protection, like a lot of canopy. The leaves have to protect the grape from, it can get sunburned, it can get windburned. Emir is, again, we also mentioned that one is another good one. It means it's a title. It's an Ottoman title meaning lord, and supposedly it got that name because only the very wealthy could afford to have the grape back in the day. But I think one of my favorite, there's so many. There are some really good ones. But I really like Guk.
Okay. What does it
Guk.
mean?
Guk means sky.
Mhm.
And apparently it got this name because where this grape is grown, the grape is multi-purpose. People use it to make wine at home. but they also eat it. They make raisins out of it. But instead of putting the raisins like out in the sun to dry, they hang the individual bunches on strings in the rafters of their homes. So it's like the grape in the sky, which I think is very sweet.
I love that. Yeah, there's so many out of 1,400 native grapes. They're just like too many. You'll have to come to Istanbul and do one of Andrea's tastings.
You don't come and do one of my tastings. I mean, urban exploration is a fantastic way to explore wine in a country that's unfamiliar to you. I myself, I don't like to drive, particularly when I'm by myself, because I mean, can you imagine driving, navigating, and trying to taste wine all when you're responsible for all of those? That's just not smart, really.
Yeah.
So I'm a big proponent of urban wine exploration, and there are a lot of wine bars now in Istanbul where you can do everything from, like you said, Turkish Wine 101, all the way into like really deep dive into some of the rarer grape varieties.
And I know there are a few, so without giving away all of them, what would be maybe one or two wine bars that you'd recommend or places that people can go to taste wines?
I will always recommend Solera,
Mhm.
which is in Beyoğlu. It's in my neighborhood. In fact, it is my local, and it has been my local for like 12 years. The guys there are fantastic. They all speak English, so you don't have to be afraid going there that they won't understand you. They are accustomed. So they all know wine, and they all know the wine that they have,
Mhm.
but they also know how to talk to people who don't know Turkish wine about kind of like, oh, you like Cabernet, you will like this kind of it. So they're very good at that. It's
Mhm.
also one of the few places left that, knock on wood, that doesn't change, um, where it won't cost you an arm and a leg to get a glass of wine.
Mhm.
Which, when you don't know the wines, that's a pretty significant risk that you're taking.
Mhm.
But if you want to go the complete other way and do the real deep dive, then you have to go to the Asian side, to Moda, to Wayana. Wayana has what I think is the largest wine list in the entire country. They have between 400 and 500 wines, I think 90% of which are available by the glass.
Mm.
And again, super, super friendly, well informed staff who are always happy to talk to you about wine, your how you like wine, what you might like that's Turkish. And both bars are always happy to, like, pour you, like, do a test pour. They're
Mhm.
not going to give you the glass, and if you don't like it, then too bad. That's your glass.
And what's the best way to get over to Moda if you were staying in Beyoğlu, which is where you are now and where Solera is?
Well, actually, to find the best way, you should check out Vines and Pearls Instagram or my YouTube, because we just filmed a video about this the other day. The best way to get to the Asian side, maybe not the fastest, but the best, is on the ferry. The ferries are part of the public transportation system. They are they go pretty regularly to a number of different places up and down the Bosphorus. But if you're going over to like Kadıköy Moda, those run really regularly. And especially on a beautiful day like this, how could you not just want to be on the water for that like 20-30 minutes that it takes? It's just so pretty. You get to kind of see the sights as you're going, and you might even spot some dolphins.
Absolutely. The ferries, as you know, are one of my favorite things about Istanbul. And
They are the best part, yes.
how cool is that you have Solera, as you said, in Europe, technically, and then you have Wayana in Moda
Guyana and Asia. Yep.
on Asia, yeah, on the Asian continent. So you could literally taste in two different continents in a single day.
Yes, yes, you could.
And looks like you're changing wines here.
I am changing wines because I went and I poured both of them. So,
Okay. What have you got now?
this is, all right, move around my glasses. Um, this is from a winery. Actually, this is great. So we went from a wine from the Asian part of the continent, from Anatolia, to now we're on the European side of the continent, at the top of the Gallipoli Peninsula. This is Chateau Ergenekon. They work exclusively with international grapes. And this is what I say, this is a 24. In 2024, there were some fire problems in that part of the peninsula, and kind of like some of the Californian wineries have had to learn how to do over the last few years with the massive wildfire problems that we keep having in California. They managed to kind of take their smoke tainted grapes and I guess make lemonade out of them if you want to mix some metaphors there. And they made a skin contact Sauvignon Blanc. They're calling it Inferno because of the fires.
Mhm.
And this has, I'm reading the back of the label, 21 days of skin contact. And then it sat on the lees for 6 months.
Look at that color also.
It is an impressive color, I know. And
Mhm.
the nose is, it is remarkable. It is a remarkable wine. It's all, I know I didn't go into tasting notes in the first one, but this one is just like super aromatic and in your face. And it's a lot of tobacco and tobacco flower, uh, like baked Iva dish.
Quince.
Quince, thank you. I know I can never remember this one in English. A little bit of, and maybe this is like me romanticizing knowing that it came from fire tainted grapes and everything, but there's like a little bit of a toasted marshmallow thing happening as well.
Mm. I like that with the tobacco and kind of the floral from the quince and
And
the
it's very
marshmallow.
tannic. I mean, 21
Mhm.
days on the skins, very tannic. And this is a wine that really wants food. This is not a wine. I mean, I happen to just be sipping it on the balcony, but this is a wine that really should be paired with food.
Okay. We're gonna wait for the results.
It was on the lees for 6 months, so it's very soft. It's not got that racy acidity that a lot of Sauvignon Blanc has. So yeah, it's a little bit softer in the mouth, a little bit fatter, but not like flabby fat, just fatter. It's an interesting wine. It's just it needs food.
And it needs food. What kind of food would you pair with it? What kind of food is it asking for?
Actually, I don't off the top of my head know what kind of cheese would go with that. I would have to think about that. I actually paired it with a dinner I made the other night, which was I took pork mince with a bunch of kind of Indonesian inspirations like lime zest, makrut lime leaves, chilies, garlic, ginger, um, fried all of that up with some rice, some quick pickles. Um, and it did very well with those Indonesian flavors.
Hmm, that sounds good. That could be a whole nother episode also when you mentioned cheese, because Turkey has a whole bunch of cheeses that, yeah, we probably don't have enough time to go into, but you are also my cheese guru. So that's, that's a whole nother thing.
I am a level 1 cheese appreciator. Thank you.
I think it's more like level 5. Like what level do we
But
have?
I'm official level 1. I have the
Okay.
certificate and a
Is there?
pin to go with that.
Okay. I did not know that.
That was one of my COVID projects. There was, the London School of Cheese was doing an online cheese appreciation program.
I did not even realize this was a real thing. This makes
Yes.
a lot of sense now because one of Andrea's favorite when I met Andrea was during the pandemic and we were doing wine tastings, virtual wine tastings. And one of my favorites was a wine and cheese pairing. So Turkish wines with mostly Turkish cheeses, but I think we had some international then.
I think they were not in, I might have done an international, but I also did a number of, the Turkish made but European style cheeses,
Hmm.
I think. Like
Right.
the tamales that are like kind of brie and camembert adjacent.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites. And also, you've done tastings like there was a women in wine tasting. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so Turkey is fascinating in that this is the country you would not think would have equality in anything. Um, and in a country that only has about 30-ish percent of women in the workforce at all. But wine is a globally male dominated industry. In everywhere, old world, new world, everywhere. But in Turkey, I think it's like at least 50% of the wineries involve a woman at some level of power decision making. They own the wineries. They make the wine. They work in a couple different ways. They work in the vineyards there, so that we have viticulturalists, but also, I mean, the majority of women or the majority of people who work the harvests are also
Mhm.
women.
Mhm.
Um, the leading wine market managing consultant in the country is a woman, and I have to say, for her especially, she must be the smartest person I know, because advertising alcohol in this country is illegal. And she's built an entire career out of marketing a product that you're not legally allowed to market.
Mhm.
She's a genius. I don't know how she did it.
Who's that? Okay.
Derai Kocamer.
Uh-huh.
She works for a number of the wine routes, a number of the wineries. She represents Turkey at a lot of international tastings. She's so smart.
Fantastic. I love that connection, though, that women in wine was even a thing. That I think you did it for International Women's Day. That was such a fun one. So you've spent time exploring wine regions in places like Greece, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Georgia, the country, not the state. What draws you to lesser known wine regions?
I think there is a combination of reasons. Some of it is just geography. Those are the countries closest to me.
Hmm.
Um, but there's also, in a lot of these places, the ability to explore wine without prejudice behind it. I mean, which, I mean, obviously you can do that anywhere, because personal prejudice, if nothing else. But so much has been written or studied already about the Western European, like the big three or four, um, that you go in and you already are like, okay, well, this is Sancerre, so I know what I'm going to be tasting, or I know what I should be tasting, or this is Moselle Riesling. I should be, getting like these like bright citrus, high acidity, blah blah blah. Um, but you don't necessarily know what you're going to be getting when you're trying like a Kisi from, I don't remember which region that is in Georgia, or Asprudi from the Peloponnese, or like these are countries that are, while on one hand are very very old, like Turkey, their modern wine industries are still developing, and um they're still kind of in the stage where they're playing with things, and they're not as hamstrung by the regional winemaking regulations as the Western European countries. So I think in some ways it's more interesting. It's a little bit of a wild west. So
Hmm.
on the one hand, you face, um, you might either, you could get very bad wine sometimes, or because you don't know what you're getting into, you might get something that you just really do not like. But you might find like this thing that you never thought you were gonna taste, and it's like, "Oh my gosh, where has this been all my life?" And apparently it's been, buried on a hill in Hungary. So I don't know. That's what I like about it.
Sounds like it's coming from experience there. I think that's maybe the big trick, right? Like, how do you balance, or how does someone balance if you've got just a basic level of wine? Like, I like wine, or maybe I know I like red, or I like white, or something like this, like real basic level. How do you balance getting outside of your comfort zone to try something different? When you're traveling to some place where you just know nothing, because I think people might gravitate towards the grapes, the names of grapes that they know when they come to Turkey, for example.
Sure. Sure. Um, I mean, for one thing, especially when we're talking Turkey, or actually all of these countries, Greece, Hungary, um, Georgia, none of them have particularly easy to say grape names.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. You're amazing at the pronunciations.
I am not, and this is a video series that I want to explore with Goda. This also comes from a place of, everybody should try to learn hello, please, and thank you, or whatever, but don't let not being able to say the grape name
Mhm,
intimidate you. I mean, heck, just point at it if you're worried about saying it.
mhm.
Uh, and particularly in countries like this, that they know that they have ridiculously difficult languages, and they are happy to help you learn how to pronounce it if you really want to. But so don't let not being able to say it like be the barrier. It's I think people should approach wine the way they do food. I mean, we were talking about street food earlier. Most people are excited to try street food or, whatever food in a restaurant that they hear about. Think about wine in the same way, even though I mean, wine has given itself a bad reputation over the last couple uh, decades, century, whatever. I don't know. And it's kind of like, that you have to be educated in wine
Yeah.
to drink it, let alone appreciate it. But that's just not true. Like wine should be something that is enjoyed like any other beverage, any food product. Um, Most people these days, I like to think, who work in wine are of this kind of just enjoy, just have at it, explore it. Like don't worry about like. And I'm gonna call out the French because even if they're not snobby these days, like that is the image we all have, right? Of like the French sommelier that in Paris who is this is not a like I don't French accent like I don't know. If you know that you like red wine, then that's your entry point. Just start with the red. Go to a wine bar or a winery if you're at a winery and say, I like red wine. I like this grape in my country. What have you got? You know, what can you do for me? And people are generally happy to try to help you find your local grape because most I have found in my experience that most wine people just want you to enjoy something and hopefully walk away with a new favorite grape.
Have you
That
had
was
an
a very
experience?
rambly answer. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, no. Have you had that experience like in another country when you went for a tasting as a tourist? Like, can you think of a good experience that you've had when you've gone for a tasting?
Um, well, I mean, I think I'm coming at a different place than where your question was coming from, though,
Mhm.
I because that is how I travel. I travel for wine, and I
Mhm.
am very resentful of travel that is not about wine. um, so I guess I approach things very differently. Like for me, if I go to a wine bar somewhere, I'm like, what is the most obscure grape that you've got? Like, what have I not heard of?
It's like a
That I'm
challenge.
yeah, yeah, yes. And or I do this at wine shops too, and they're like, "Oh, have you tried this? You tried this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm sorry. I bought that the last time I was here. Like, what's new?" I'm a little bit of a brat when it comes to things like that.
I think some people would be afraid of, like you said, wasting their, time or their vacation dollars on a bottle that they then don't like or a glass that they don't like even. Is there a way around that you'd recommend?
Well, and I think this is where it comes to like going to wine bars. Start at wine bars, places that have good by the glass selections, and before you like commit to that glass, ask, can you taste it? I mean, the bottle's already open.
Mhm.
And most normal wine bars, which means like 3 of them in Istanbul, but mostly in Europe, yes, they'll pour you a splash to make sure that you like it before you commit to the whole glass. And if you don't like it, you can just say, "This isn't my wine." Um, and if you can, I mean, and you don't have to do it with like fancy tasting notes, like I need a white that tastes of cut garden hose and my childhood and like that's the thing. Um, but so it doesn't have to like be ridiculous like that, but you can say like like for me this one maybe it tastes a little bit sour or I like things that are a little bit fruitier or like
Mhm.
servers will know how to then direct you like, oh well, you didn't love this is the wrong grape for you, let me try this one.
Mhm.
um and then what you can do is, make sure always take a picture of the bottle when you like it.
Mhm.
Actually, I suggest to people to keep 2 folders. Take pictures of the wines that you did like, take pictures of the ones you didn't like, and
Mhm.
separate them.
Okay.
Because then when you like if you're not at a wine bar where they then sell wine to go, a lot of places do that. So it's always worth asking. If you're going to a wine shop later, say, okay, I like these.
Mm.
Do you have any of these? Do you have anything that's like these?
Mhm.
And keep that I don't like them folder in the past because maybe you forgot the ones you didn't like and
Mm,
you will accidentally buy one of those. So be like very
that's
clear.
such a good tip.
I did not like these. Don't give me these.
Yeah.
I loved these. What do you have in this? You know,
Right. Even if there's a language barrier, it's like these, yes. These,
exactly. Thumbs
no.
up. Yeah. Thumbs up, thumbs down works in most countries. So
That's fantastic. That's a really great tip. Thank you. Um, Thinking about your own travels, then, like I know you travel a little bit differently. You said all travel leads to wine. What are some of your favorite places that you've been?
maybe it's just because I just got back, but Hungary. I love
Yeah.
Hungary. So
Mhm.
good. Phenomenal wine scene. Um, I've been lucky enough to drink in not just Budapest, but to explore some of the wine regions there. And I think one of my favorite wine regions in the world is in Hungary. It's called Somló. It's this tiny little hill in the west of the country. They make phenomenal wine there. You know, I love urban wine exploration in Athens. I love Greek wine so very, very much. And I do mostly explore in Athens. I've been to a few of the regions,
Mhm.
but not enough of them. I just like, there again, there's that driving issue. And
Mhm.
Crete. I mean, Crete is the perfect place for people who love wine, food, and history and beaches. It has it's all of that. All of that. But yeah, also then Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Surprising.
I do try to do a little bit of Michigan wine exploration every time I visit my family.
Mhm.
And last fall when I was there, I went to what I think is one of the best wineries in the state and had a marvelous time. And can I say sorry? Your podcast is going to be like 5 hours long at this point. Um, when you're at a winery or a wine bar or something like that, this kind of like continuing the don't be afraid to mispronounce the grape thing, but also if you're into it, like if you're really excited about something and you want to learn more, don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, yes, if like you're in a place that's like stupid busy and the waiters are all running around, you know, maybe wait for them to have a little bit of a break. But particularly if you're at a tasting. So I went to this winery in Michigan, and my cousin and I had booked a tasting. So we booked the guided tasting. They had like several different levels of things you could do. We booked the guided tasting and he gave us the wine list. And he's like, okay, you can choose six and we'll go through that. And as it turned out, it didn't have to be the same six. So Amanda and I chose a couple different things.
Mhm.
And I think right away in one of the first or second wines, we asked a couple of questions, and the guy was like, "Oh, you know what you're talking like you're actually interested in this." Like so I don't know how many wines he poured for us. We were late to our next appointment because we would have just stayed with him. He was marvelous, and he pulled out things that they didn't even offer on the tasting list for us.
Yeah.
And this is what happens when you show interest, when
Mhm.
you start asking questions and you like you don't have to know wine, like you don't have to ask air quote smart questions.
Mhm.
Um there are almost no I've had to modify this. There are almost no stupid questions. Um just ask because people are excited that you're interested and they want to share their information and their passion with you. And so suddenly more stuff starts coming out. And that's, I think, how you have the best experiences is by asking questions.
I feel like this has happened to you not even just with wine, because when you've gone to, I think it was Italy, and you came back with like olive oil, balsamic
A little
vinegar.
balsamic vinegar tasting. Yeah. That was one of my more expensive. That was the only time I've spent more on something that wasn't wine.
And did that come from asking questions, like you said?
It did.
Trying
It was
to.
another yes, it absolutely did. It was another one of those. I had booked the tasting thing, but because I had my notebook with me and because part of my Italian like one snippet of a chapter of the Italian Wine Scholar program is about balsamic vinegar because that also starts with grapes and there's a very particular way that it's made and everything. So I had about this much knowledge already, but it was enough knowledge to be interested and to have a couple of good questions already to ask.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, the woman pouring the balsamic vinegar for me was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's taste some stuff. Um, Yeah, and I mean, it worked out for her because I ended up spending like 300 euros in her shop or something outrageous.
It worked out for us too because you brought it back home and we got to have a nice vertical tasting of different balsamics and cheese. You're also a fantastic host when it comes to like dinner parties and tasting wines and things. Do you have advice for people who are looking to kind of gather friends around a table with wine or other things?
Think it's the same thing that I feel like the same thing I've been saying is have fun with it. Like, I mean, I know all of us when we're hosting, when we're making dinner, especially, you're like freaking out because nothing gets done at the same time. And I remember when I moved out of my parents' house, I grew up with two ovens and two stovetops. So it was so easy to make everything come out at the same time. And I was like, how do people do it with one? It's not possible. So yeah, I know. We're all freaking out because we've like the potatoes overboiled and we didn't set the table and like so we're all over the place. But your guests feel that, right? And they don't care that dinner goes on the table like a half an hour later. So, like, especially if you've remembered to put out a cheese board or something like that first. Um, so just be relaxed. And because for one thing, if you're freaking out and you're not relaxed and you're not enjoying yourself, and again, your guests feel that they're not really enjoying themselves. So it could be like beautiful. It could taste delicious. It could be a beautiful table setting. But if everybody's really tense, then no one's having fun. So make it fun. Have a theme,
Mhm.
lighten your load, tell people to bring stuff and like freaking be specific. I have learned this with wine. People are like, oh, let me. And mostly this annoys me because I'm like, no, I'm making this dinner because I have this wine specifically that I want to pair with it. But don't be afraid to tell if they say, no, I really want to bring something. Don't be like, oh, bring whatever. Don't do that because they will. Be specific. Tell them I need strawberries. I need this specific wine from this specific producer. Don't just bring me, whatever crap you found at the grocery store. Bring me the good crap that you found at the grocery store. Like I don't know if that's helpful.
That I mean, being specific is a good thing, and also I think having people bring things as a guest because I'm most often not the host. I've mostly been the guest, as you know, because I've been your guest a few times. But it's helpful to know what to bring and to have specific instructions also makes it helpful. But we've had I think our most fun pairing maybe at a dinner party
Yes.
was the three. That was kind of an unexpected pairing. Like, how did we even get that idea? That came into
Because
okay.
Eva, so my other Hawaiian friend, actually, I have another new Hawaiian friend.
Okay.
Yes, she's kind of
Had
she's a
been
little bit of
roommates.
a howly, but it was at least born and semi grew up there. Um, yeah, so my other Hawaiian friend, Eva, um, went to Hawaii, she's from
Maui
Maui,
wine,
right?
I think.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Went to Maui to visit her family and brought back 3 Hawaiian wines for me because all 50 states make wine.
I did
Fun
not know
trivia fact.
until meeting you about that
Yep,
also. Yeah.
all
Mhm.
50, including Hawaii. And one of the wines, so I wanted to do a pairing with this, and of course I'm going to ask you because you're my Hawaii food friend how to do this. I think he would already introduced me to spam musubis at that point. And one of the wines that Eva brought was a traditional method sparkling pineapple wine, which sounds atrocious, but apparently we learned if you pair it correctly, it's amazing.
That was so fun.
So we did the spam musubis. You did a chicken something.
Mochiko chicken.
Sure. Um, I did a coconut pudding for dessert, and there was some other stuff on the table. I don't
Mhm.
exactly remember what else it was, but no, that spam musubi is with the sparkling pineapple wine. That still is one of the best food and wine pairings I have ever done.
And I think that was fun because it was also a little bit of a potluck. Like I'm a fan of potlucks and people bringing something that maybe represents their own like home. Because Yuki was there that time and she brought a Japanese potato salad, for
And the
example,
Japanese wine. Uh-huh.
and the Japanese wine. Yeah, so that's kind of fun. Everybody's got like food memories or maybe even wine memories, as you're saying. All 50 states have wineries, so anyone in the U.S. can search out like what are their local wineries. I got to try some Michigan wines recently when I finally got to visit Michigan, right?
What's your experience?
It was good. So I went to Holland, Michigan on Andrea's recommendation to visit a cheese shop. And because it was also tulip time, which tulips represent Turkey to me also, like there's a lot of crossover in this. But going to Holland, Michigan for this cheese shop specifically, and getting to try that, asking them about some wines. I had the shopkeeper give some great recommendations, and we took a white. I can't even remember what grape it was, but it was delicious. It paired perfectly with the cheeses that she recommended.
Lovely.
So, I want to talk a little bit about other places that you've been, because one that's dear to both of us is Athens. You talk about urban wine exploration, so about Greek wines. Can you tell me a little bit about your love for Greek wine?
Some of my best friends used to live in Athens, and I'd been to Athens once before, and it wasn't a great experience. So I had felt very kind of anti-Athens, anti-Greece. And then they moved there, and they kept trying to get me to come visit. And finally, I think Mauricio sent me pictures of the inside of the wine shop. That was the closest to that. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll come visit.
My arms.
Yeah. And from there, it became partially to see them, but partially for the wine. And I mean, they knew their audience, so they were happy. God love them, happy to have me, regardless if I was there. It ended up being like 3 trips a year for quite a few years until they left. And every time it was just going deeper and deeper into the wine. They took me a few times into the Peloponnese to actually go to wineries, but the majority of my Greek wine education has been at the wine bars, and Athens has a spectacular selection of wine bars.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite?
I do. Warehouse CO2, because they are a sparkling wine house, because I love that. Heteroclito. I love Heteroclito. Also because both warehouse. So, okay, Athens. What the heck with the Greeks? And it's everybody associates wine and Greece, right? Because ancient Greeks and wine and blah, blah, blah. They are not day drinkers. Their wine bars don't open until like 5. I don't know what that is. But both Warehouse CO2 and Heteroclito open much earlier. So that's probably why they're some of my favorites. But also, I recommend everyone to go to Drunky Goat, which, for one thing, all of the artwork in there is AI generated goats that are like drinking wine and stuff. This is fantastic. But they do flights, which is not something you see a lot, even in Athens. And B, they have this blind tasting wine game that you can play. So you choose the kind of flight theme that you want. They bring you the flights. They don't tell you what the wines are. You scan the QR code, and it's like a game that you play on your phone, and you're supposed to try to correctly identify some aromas in the wines. And it's so much fun. When they first started doing it, it was just on paper, and that was fun too. But now that they've like gone digital, like if you get a correct answer, you'll hear applause. And if you get a wrong answer, then there's like a crowd that's like, oh, like you've missed the tennis ball or something. And then after you get through the wine, then they tell you about the grape, they tell you about the wine, about the region. It's so if you're really interested in doing wine, and if you're shy about asking questions, Drunky Goat is a great place to start. But they don't open until 4.
Okay. Yeah. I love it that it's gamified. So yeah, with the timing, if someone's visiting Athens, that is kind of tricky. I like that you're on top of this, like making it into an itinerary almost. How would you recommend people go around that?
So I just finished, actually, I've been working on it since like January. Just finished and will be published on my website next week. A wine and ruins, self-guided Athens kind of downloadable thing that you can put on your phone. You can print it out if you want. And it's a way to mix traditional tourism with wine tourism. So you spend your day doing ruins, and your late afternoon evenings doing wine. And so what I've done with the guide is I'm trying to find wineries that are at least semi near the particular ruin that is being addressed. And I don't like go into the history about the ruins and everything because there are so many different places where you can do that. I provide links in the guide where you can go if you want to read more about the ruins themselves. But what I do is I give a basic, like, this is what the ruin is, and kind of this is how you could connect it to wine.
Mhm.
And I give like some wine recommendations for the specific ruins, which I think is a maybe a different way to think about both wines and ancient ruins. And then I say go to this wine bar, and there you can try X, Y, and Z kind of a thing. So
That sounds so fun.
yeah.
Is there an example of like a ruin and a wine bar
And
or
a
a ruin
wine bar.
grape that you were going with someone who was their first time to Athens, a wine lover who it's their first time to Athens? What would be one that you would recommend they
I
pair?
think I think one of the ones that I remember now. So I've been to Athens. I don't even know how many times at this point. And that very, very first trip that I took forever ago, I'd done the Acropolis and I'd done a couple of the other things and then just kind of never did the touristy stuff again.
Mhm.
One of the things that I realized that I'd missed was the ancient agora and the temple of Hephaestus,
Mhm.
which is amazing. The temple of Hephaestus. Holy crap, it's amazing. It's still like almost fully intact. It's incredible. I really wish that they would let you like wander around through it, but no. Of course not. Um, so okay, so you go to the ancient agora and you go to
Mhm.
the temple of Hephaestus. Hephaestus is the god of fire, right? And he's always depicted like in a volcano with like his Shay, what he was what's this
The
word?
Smith, the
Thank you.
anvil, and
Yeah. But like in his hammer and he's like,
Mhm.
making stuff for the gods and everything. So fire. Where do you go for fire wines? You go to volcanic islands, which
Mm.
means Santorini, really.
Okay. Mhm.
Um, so obviously the number one recommendation for a wine from Santorini is something made with Assyrtiko. Assyrtiko is like the king of all the grapes
Mhm.
in Greece. But maybe you don't like super acidic, racy, like strip the enamel off your teeth wines. That's your choice. Um, there are other grapes on the islands in much smaller quantities, but you could try like a more floral wine from like Ainani or Athiri. Or if you
Mhm.
like red wines, they do a lot of Shemavro Tragano on the island.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I've paired them. So that's
I
like the
love that.
association. That's how we get to wine from Hephaestus, and that's kind of the way that I recommend it.
I love it. That's so fun. What an interesting connection to places. Is that how your brain works when you're traveling too? Do you make connections? Because how do you remember all of these grapes and places and things?
It's study
Yeah.
and drinking. Also because I write about wine, so it's even like it sounds like I know what I'm talking about now, but like the next blog post that I'm going to write, I will probably look stuff up and remind myself about it. And I mean, funnily enough, a lot of the stuff that I look up is stuff that I've written.
Well, going back to your notes, I mean, okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay. Couple of just fun questions before we wrap up then.
Uh-huh.
Or well, a couple of more general questions. What is a flavor, food, or experience that changed the way that you see the world?
Dang, now you're going deep. Um, the way that I see the world, that's like
Mhm.
really big.
Or it could also be the way that you see a certain place, maybe.
I mean, I have emotional connection to some of the foods that I've had. Has anything particularly changed the way I see a place? Can I can I come back to that?
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you the reason that I put that question in there. For me, for example, it was a wine when I was first traveling to New Zealand. I was young. I was in my 20s then, I think, and kind of new to wines. And all I had had of Sauvignon Blanc was California Sauvignon Blancs. Like I had tasted them at wineries in California. And I thought I hated Sauvignon Blanc and I hated, like, I just had this set image in my mind. And then tasting it in a different place, like tasting a Sauvignon Blanc in New Zealand, light bulb, like, what? This could be completely different in another place was just very eye opening to me. And I started to be, I think, a lot more open minded when it came to grapes in other places.
Mm, okay. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, in a way, I have a somewhat similar wine story, I suppose, in that this was when I was still in the US and before I started studying wine. Um, I already had in my mind that Italian wines that's where I liked wine. It is mostly is true. Um, and I used to tell people that I loved Sangiovese. I love this grape, but I hated Chianti.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I started studying wine after moving to Turkey that I realized that Chianti is made with Sangiovese.
I didn't even know that.
And I had like this whole existential crisis, like, oh, do I hate Sangiovese? Do I like Chianti? Like I don't understand anymore what's happening. Um and I tried a few more Chiantis and I'm like, I will like this because I like Sangiovese, but no, indeed, I do not like Chianti. I do not want that anywhere near me. But this also then speaks to how fascinating wine can be and where things grow makes such a big difference. So within Tuscany, Chianti is, for most people, it's probably the most well-known wine. But there are smaller regions where they make wines called Vino Nobile and oh bugger, Vino Nobile. I'm an Italian wine scholar. Brunello,
Okay.
both of which I think on average cost significantly more than
Yeah.
Chianti.
Mm.
Uh, I have had them very sparingly, very few times in my life, but they are amazing, stunning wines, and they are made with Sangiovese. And I have also had Australian Sangiovese that blew my mind. So it's whatever it is about the Chianti region and about how the soil is there, the climates, how they make the wine, that is not my jam. But that particular grape, I have learned that I can love even when it comes from like the next freaking village
Mhm.
in Brunello or Vino Nobile, um, or even Australia. And I'm
Mhm.
not going to tell that story. But so, I mean, I guess there's kind of that.
Mhm.
Uh, Which is also, I guess goes to speak to the you don't have to know a lot about wine to enjoy it because I felt like a complete fool when I realized that such amazing Chianti were the same thing.
That's okay. We sometimes get humbled by our exploration when
Yes,
it
we
comes
do,
to,
and
to
that's
food and
fine.
wine.
Yes. Being humble keeps us all real and helps us enjoy the wins a little bit more, I think.
I know we don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole on this, but you also had a very interesting series of like the face-offs, I think it was, with
Yeah,
different grapes in.
haven't been able to do one of those in a little while. Yeah. Yeah, I started a series because so many Turkish wines are made with international grapes.
Mhm.
And I tend to not drink those. My passion is the native grapes, but because particularly when I first got started, A, there were fewer wines made with native grapes in Turkey, and B, I had this it seemed much more reasonable like 8 years ago than it is now. I was like, "I'm gonna try all of the wine." There are only 190 wineries. I can do it. I can try all of them. Um, but particularly with red wine, I now have a collection of like Cab and Shiraz and other things that I don't particularly like. Those are not my go-to grapes from any country. But I got a whole closet full of them and I got to drink them at some point. So I thought to make it interesting, I would start comparing some of the international Turkish grapes or international wines made with international grapes in Turkey with wines made from those grapes in places maybe where they're particularly well known. So yeah,
Mhm.
so I did like Turkey versus Australia Shiraz.
Mhm.
I did a couple editions of that. Like Turkey versus Germany, Shea Riesling. Yeah, those have been fun. And a few times there's been a clear winner. Riesling should not be grown in Turkey. I'm sorry. Nope. Um, but a couple of like the Shirazes there were like a couple like, yeah, both places, or the Semillon. I did Semillon from both Turkey and Australia, and those were a draw. So it's yeah.
It reminds me of World Cup that we've got going on right now. It's like the World Cup of wines where we're having a turkey face off with some of the other countries.
The problem, ironically, is not being able to get the international grapes on the Turkish side. It's actually getting the wine from the other country that is the tricky part that kind of has stopped me doing more in the series. But yeah, it'd be fun to like you could even do like a March Madness bracket kind of a thing.
You have to do that next.
I need somebody to give me wine. Finding the international wines, that's not easy here.
Well, hopefully if people come to visit Turkey and come to take tours with you in Vines and Pearls, maybe they can bring a bottle from wherever they're from.
That would be fun.
That would be my recommendation. If someone was to follow just one rabbit hole after listening to this conversation, because I think you and I are both very interested just in things in general. So there are lots of rabbit holes to dive down. If someone were to follow just one, where should they go?
Well, as much as I would love to say Turkish wine, obviously, since it will be largely unavailable to most of your listeners in the US anyway, that's
Except in Texas.
yeah, unless you're in Texas. If you're in Texas specifically, your rabbit hole is Turkish wine. This might be a little bit vague, but I would say deep dive into flavor, because this is also something to do. And if you're interested in food or wine, but especially if you're interested in wine, so a lot of people like if you listen to people give wine notes or read people's wine notes, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, and then if you manage to have the same wine, you're like, how did you get like from here to there? Like, how did I get tobacco and tobacco flour and quince
Toasted marshmallow?
Toasted marshmallow. Like, yeah, some of it's a little made up. I'm not gonna lie. But it's because people who are particularly people who cook food and people who are in wine, we taste everything. When I was writing the Essential Guide to Turkish Wine and I was trying to do like food pairing advice for the Turkish grapes, I it was a horrible, horrible part of my research because I stood in my kitchen with an open bottle of wine and all of my spices laid out around me, and I ate dry spices, which is disgusting. And I ate them and I drank the wine and I'm like, no. Or yeah, that one's okay. But so tasting everything. That's how you develop the memory, the palate, the understanding of what you might be tasting or smelling is just taste everything. Yeah, go eat the nasty dry spices. It's gross, but it will give you a better idea of what allspice tastes like and how it's different from nutmeg. Lick a rock, maybe wash it.
Proud.
Well, we talk so much in wine about like how certain wines taste like crushed rocks or crushed gravel or crushed seashell or something like that. Like, go lick some.
I love this. Permission to be a geek again. The garden hose one also reminds me
dirt,
of that.
Eat
the dirt. Okay.
Eat the dirt. Actually, yes. Go to it. Like, I mean, maybe find out first what kind of fertilizer or chemicals they're using.
Maybe some chemicals.
Yeah. And yeah, wash the rocks and stuff first. But just taste everything. Taste everything so that you have that kind of understanding of flavor, because it will help you if you like food, if you like wine, if you like liquors. I mean, tequila is, and I'm sure other things, I just particularly like tequila. Tequila is so nuanced, right? Like you can find as many tasting notes for tequila as you can find for wine. So, but if you don't have the vocabulary to describe those, then for one thing, it's harder to tell people what your flavor profile is, what you like. But I think for me, it also enhances the enjoyment when you can really kind of pick out those things, and it's a fun party trick too.
I love it, and I mean, that's kind of a perfect place to end because the name of this podcast is Passport to Flavor. And so I think, tasting everything,
Yeah.
whether it's licking rocks or, pairing wines with Vishneli kebab, or there are so many different flavors out there in the world. And yeah. Are there any things that we didn't talk about or we didn't cover that you would like to, that were on your mind?
Uh, just um, be adventurous. Don't be shy. If it's food, if it's wine, if it's travel, if it's learning a language, um, just get out there and do it. People appreciate all of the efforts when you are trying to speak to them in their language, or when you are trying to appreciate their food or wine or whatever it is you do. Just uh, don't be a jerk about it. No, I mean, seriously, like, you get a little wine knowledge under your belt and suddenly you know everything, and people can be real, like, jerks about stuff like that. Just be open, be happy, and follow me at Quirky Cork on Instagram and buy my books, The Essential Guide to Turkish Wine and The Quick and Dirty Guide to Greek Wine.
Which all of those will be linked in the show notes. So definitely follow Andrea on all of those.
This has been so much fun, Lillian.
It's so much fun. I know we should be doing this more regularly.
We
So
absolutely
cheers.
should.
Cheers to that. Cheers to tasting, share to tasting everything.
Cheers.